The tension between Frodo, Sam and Gollum during their journey to Mount Doom is palpable. Tolkien builds it up, alternating moments of tension and relaxation, and thus let it explode in the finale. Sam never trusted Gollum, never believed he could redeem himself. But what would have happened if they become friends? How would the story have changed? Tolkien gives us an answer in letter 246. Before we explore this hypothesis, we need to better understand the character of Sam. Tolkien writes, Sam is meant to be lovable and laughable. Some readers he irritates and even infuriates. I can well understand it. All hobbits at times affect me in the same way, though I remain very fond of them. But Sam can be very trying. He is a more representative hobbit than any others that we have seen much of, and he has consequently a stronger ingredient of that quality which even some hobbits found at times hard to bear. A vulgarity, by which I do not mean a mere down-to-earthiness. A mental myopia which is proud of itself, a smugness in varying degrees, and cocksureness, and a readiness to measure and sum up all things from a limited experience, largely enshrined in sententious traditional wisdom. Hobbits, as we know, are simple characters, endowed with the folk wisdom typical of rural communities, that ignore the complexities of the world. But Frodo, Sam, Merry and Pippin are not conventional hobbits. We only meet exceptional hobbits in close companionship, those who had a grace or gift, a vision of beauty, and a reverence for things nobler than themselves, at war with their rustic self-satisfaction. Imagine Sam without his education by Bilbo and his fascination with things elvish. Sam then, while embodying more of the worldly traits of hobbits than the others, is a complex character whose humility concealed a hint of pride. Sam was cocksure and deep down a little conceited, but his conceit has been transformed by his devotion to Frodo. He did not think of himself as heroic or even brave or in any way admirable, except in his servants and loyalty to his master. That had an ingredient, probably inevitable, of pride and possessiveness. It is difficult to exclude it from the devotion of those who perform such service. In any case, it prevented him from fully understanding the master that he loved, and from following him in his gradual education to the nobility of service to the unlovable and of perception of damaged good in the corrupt. He plainly did not fully understand Frodo's motive or his distress in the incident of the Forbidden Pool. If he had understood better what was going on between Frodo and Gollum, things might have turned out differently in the end. This leads to what Tolkien says is the most tragic moment in the story. The tension between the triptych could be resolved for the best, but Sam fails to see the complexity of Gollum. For me, perhaps the most tragic moment in the tale comes in Volume 2, pages 323 forward, when Sam fails to notice the complete change in Gollum's tone and aspect. "Nothing, nothing," said Gollum softly. "Nice master." His repentance is blighted, and all Frodo's pity is wasted, in a sense that pity, to be a true virtue, must be directed to the good of its object. It is empty if it is exercised only to keep oneself clean, free from hate or the actual doing of injustice, though this is also a good motive. Tolkien insisted that it was inevitable that things would turn out this way, given the way he had characterized Sam, but even he wondered what would have happened if the story had taken a different turn. This is due, of course, to the logic of the story. Sam could hardly have acted differently. He did reach the point of pity at last. His mind was hot with wrath. It would be just to slay this treacherous, murderous creature, but deep down in his heart, there was something that restrained him. He could not strike this thing lying in the dust, forlorn, ruinous, utterly wretched. But for the good of Gollum, too late. If he had, what could have then happened? The course of the entry into Mordor and the struggle to reach Mount Doom would have been different, and so would the ending. So what if Sam had seen Gollum's chance for redemption and, like Frodo, embraced it? the interest would have shifted to Gollum, I think, and the battle that would have gone on between his repentance and his new love on one side, and the ring. Though the love would have been strengthened daily, it could not have wrested the mastery from the ring. I think that in some queer, twisted and pitiable way, Gollum would have tried, not maybe with conscious design, to satisfy both. Certainly, at some point not long before the end, it would have stolen the ring or taken it by violence, as he does in the actual tale. But possession satisfied, I think he would then have to sacrifice himself for Frodo's sake, and he have voluntarily cast himself into the fiery abyss. Tolkien not only tells us what would have happened, but he also gives us a glimpse into the mental processes that would have led Gollum to act that way. I think that an effect of his partial regeneration by love would have been a clearer vision when he claimed the ring. He would have perceived the evil of Sauron and suddenly realized that he could not use the ring and had no strength or stature to keep it in Sauron's despite. The only way to keep it and hurt Sauron was to destroy it and himself together. And in a flash, he may have seen that this would also be the greatest service to Frodo. At this point, Tolkien reveals more of Frodo's thought at the time. Frodo in the tale actually takes the rings and claims it, but certainly he too would have had a clearer vision, but he was not given any time. He was immediately attacked by Gollum. When Sauron was aware of the seizure of the ring, his own hope was in its power, that the claimant would be unable to relinquish it until Sauron had time to deal with him. Frodo too would then probably, if not attacked, have had to take the same way, cast himself with the ring into the abyss. If not, he would of course have completely failed. To avoid failure, Frodo would have chosen to make the ultimate sacrifice. It would have been a choice consistent with his character, especially since the mere partial failure of not being able to throw the ring into Mount Doom of his own free will would have worn him down for a long time, as we learn in the Who Allowed Frodo and Bilbo to Travel to Valinor video. In conclusion, if Sam and Gollum had befriended each other, the story would have ended in a very similar way. Gollum would have been unable to resist the ring, but would have redeemed himself. It would have been a good arc for his character. Tolkien chose the alternative we all know in order to stay true to Sam's character, and, I believe, to make the main theme of the whole story even more powerful. Pity. Which, as we learn in the Did Frodo Fail video, when generously distributed, can make us deserving of salvation from our own mistakes, reversing our failures and turning them into victories. Thank you for following me this far. It was a lot of fun to delve in this what if, and I hope you enjoyed it too. More Lord of the Rings video can be found here, and more are coming in the future, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I thank my patrons for their support, and I wish you, as always, a good reading and a good writing. Bye!